She appeared to fully accept her position as Chu Yu's assistant. They really look alike. Use this to make your mocha and you will die. They must have been searching for fresh mugwort for a snack, but they found a plant that looked similar and was poisonous. I did not think there was any wolfsbane in this area. How did the children find it when even Maomao did not know about it? The question stayed with her. Boo, so we cannot make Kusa mocha. Chu Yu and Zulin looked at each other dejected. That is right, give it up. I know you picked some mugwort the other day, Freckles, you should share it with us. That was for Moxibustion. Chu Yu pouted indignantly at her and Zulin followed suit. Maomao mercilessly jabbed a finger in each of their mouths and pulled at their lips. Yao, that hurt, you suck. Zulin, though silent, likewise resisted. How do I suck? What was your plan, to give the entire verdigris house food poisoning? I thought I told you not to go wandering around outside by yourself anyway. We weren't by ourselves. Seizen was with us. That made Maomao frown even harder. It was exactly then that Seizen showed up, ambling in with a cloth bag in his hand. Don't go running off without me, kids, he said. I'm not a young man anymore. It was a most inauspicious thing to utter at that particular moment. He knew about Chu Yu's past. Even though Maomao kept trying to get him to stop acting like it, he insisted on treating the boy like a young princeling. Seizen, it's your fault Freckles got angry at me. Try to keep up. Without a word, Maomao brought her knuckle crashing down on Chu Yu's head. Zulin looked a little panicked. Seizen's mouth opened as if he wanted to say something, but Maomao only glared at them both. Then she went to get the mugwort she had picked for the shop the day before. It was a little dry now, but it was still recognizable. She held one item in one hand and Chu Yu's wolfsbane in the other. She placed them under Seizen's nose. It would not do much good explaining this to the children. She could at least teach the person closest to an adult in the room how to tell the difference. Do you know what these are? She asked. Sure. Mugwort and wolfsbane, obviously, Seizen said easily. Maomao looked at him with her mouth open. I thought I would secretly switch the wolfsbane for some mugwort, but I never got the chance. Why are kids always in such a hurry? He opened his pouch to reveal some freshly picked mugwort. He also took out another, smaller pouch from inside and gave it to Maomao. She looked at it with curiosity, then opened it to discover a kind of root. Is this wolfsbane root? Someone likely brought it down from the mountains and planted it here, thinking it was pretty. But that stuff is dangerous, so I pulled it up. But it would be a shame to let the root go to waste. You can use it for something, right? Yes, wolfsbane did have medicinal properties. Maomao, looking expressionless, grabbed Seizen by the hand. Still without a word, she veritably dragged him into the shop. She started lining up herbs and medicines from her shelf. Then she said, what is this? These are medlar leaves, correct? And what is their effect? They can stop coughs and diarrhea, among other things. Maomao pointed to the next herb and repeated the questions. Seizen looked perplexed, but he answered. Chu Yu and Zulin watched them from the doorway. When Maomao had finished interrogating Seizen, she crossed her arms and thought. So you already know about half the ingredients here without even thinking about it. What I don't know is what brought this on. Maomao didn't respond directly. Instead, she took a book off the shelf and handed it to him. Come to think of it, she reflected, didn't he say that once he was back on his feet he meant to buy back the encyclopedias? Can you read? She asked him. The old man taught me, he said. The old man presumably meant the former physician, the one who would never regain his right mind. If Seizen had also learned about all those medicines from the old man, it would all make sense. This was the best kind of surprise. All right, then learn this book, and you will be spending your afternoons here for a while. Maomao smacked the book she had given Seizen. I'm sorry, I will explain everything to the madam and Ukko. Seizen still looked confused, but Maomao was feeling magnanimous enough to explain it to him. You are not exactly the most gifted bouncer in the world, are you? Well ahem, I think being an apothecary would fit you much better, don't you? Well, Maomao had no intention of retiring, but it had always been her and her father running the place. It wouldn't hurt if there were another pharmacist or two around here. She had thought she might be able to fill Chu Yu, who had physical impairments, with medical knowledge, but the little boy was only interested in playing and drawing his pictures. It would be much faster to work with Seizen here. It was not just that. but as long as Jinchi was in her life, Maomao was likely to be called away from the shop regularly and with little warning. It would be best to have someone to hold down the fort. The only question was this: did Seizun want to be an apothecary? At the moment, he was looking down at the book intently. He turned a page, his expression serious. After a moment he said, "I am only a simple farmer. I went to that fortress because I had no money at all. I can read because the old man taught me. And medicine, the best I can do is pick whatever I am told to pick." Being an apothecary carried a certain amount of prestige, but Seizun seemed to be having a crisis of confidence. Too much rejection for too long had started to take a toll on him personally. In Maomao's eyes, this was a problem. She had finally found someone with some knowledge, and she was going to put them to use. She said, "What about it? Some people in this world make their living by reciting nonsensical spells, or they dance a ridiculous dance in an attempt to cure a cold. It would be a lot better to keep the patient warm and administer cough medicine and antipyretics." "You can make those at least, right?" "Well, yes, but what if someone really sick comes to me? If there is nothing you can do, then just say so. Those who are going to die will die whether they take any medicine or not. And if you believe the outlook is too bleak, send them to another place. You already know more about medicine than some doctors do, like that charlatan." To be fair, the physician at the rear palace seemed to possess a certain amount of knowledge as a medical official. He simply lacked the ability to apply it. He was very personable, but that wasn't enough. "Anyway, it's settled," Maomao said. "What's settled? Aren't you moving a little fast? We have to move fast or we will run out of time." Maomao, thinking of the letter she had received that morning, ignored the still thunderstruck Seizun. Instead, she turned to the kids. "You two, if you have time to play around, you also have time to sweep the entrance to the shop. And be sure to learn what is in those books and learn it well." This last direction was for Seizun. No sooner had she chased the kids out of the shop than she dropped a pile of books in front of him. As Maomao had suspected, Seizun turned out to be a fast learner. He picked up simple recipes quickly and proved capable of reading the encyclopedia, though slowly and hesitantly. Maomao showed him the fields near the house and those outside the walls, pointing out where the medicinal herbs grew. Maybe I should teach him which plants are poisonous too. She wasn't worried mostly that it would provoke any strange impulses in him, but she still wasn't going to give him every little detail. If he was that interested, he would learn about them during his study anyway. For now, she limited herself to the most common ingredients and how to handle them. Seizun frowned when she taught him to make an abortifacient, but he understood it was better than more physical methods of inducing an abortion. These methods included dunking the woman in cold water or simply beating her, both of which sometimes happened to courtesans. She had told Chu Yu all the same things, but the brat showed no interest in any of it. It seemed that every time she looked up, he would run off to play somewhere. His small business was proving quite profitable. He was even painting portraits for courtesans from brothels nearby. One day, Maomao told Seizun to prepare a simple medicine. She then went out to deliver some medicine a courtesan from another establishment had requested. She had barely gone outside when she heard a jingling bell. She looked up, wondering what the sound meant. A calico cat was running toward her, moving very quickly. She might well wonder what the cat was doing there. Calicos were not unusual, but this one had a noticeably fine collar. It was woven of silk and decorated with an imported bell. It was not the sort of thing you would see on every feline running around the neighborhood. "Maomao, where are you?" called a familiar voice. She soon saw a portly middle-aged man approaching at something between a walk and a run. It was the quack doctor. Maomao picked up the cat, who had grown substantially since they last met, and held her out to the doctor as he finally shuffled up. "Why, young lady, it's been quite a while," he said, smiling even as he struggled to catch his breath. "Yes, sir, it has. But what in the world is going on? The cat and the quack should have both been at the rear palace, not here in the pleasure district." Yes, about that the quack couldn't seem to catch his breath, so Maomao led him back to the apothecary shop and made him some tea. She served the drink cold, and he drank it down in one gulp. "If I may ask, what are you doing here?" On second thought, never mind. Maomao felt bad for him. They must have finally let him go. He was a perfectly decent person, but one could only sit around collecting a salary for so long before questions started about whether one was doing anything to justify it. It would be tough for him to find new employment as a eunuch, but Maomao resolved to be as cordial to him as possible. The quack looked at her skeptically and said, "I think you are under some kind of misunderstanding, miss. Please, you needn't feel embarrassed about it with me. It happens to everyone at some point. No, I am not certain it does." The quack stroked his not particularly rich moustache, while Maomao the cat yawned on his knees. Apparently he had continued to serve as her caretaker. Once consort Gyukayu had become the emperor's bride, she had moved to a palace adjoining that of the empress dowager. Many rules and regulations had to be observed there, much to the chagrin of the sovereign's little girl, Princess Lingli. Could it have possibly hurt to let her have just one pet? Maomao thought that if it were only the empress dowager, she would be fine with it. However, the other palace women who lived nearby would not have tolerated it. Gyukayu certainly had more ladies in waiting now. Even in the rear palace, she had barely managed with her 7 women. Maomao felt a pang of loneliness, but she knew it was the right decision that she hadn't followed Empress Gyukayu. Maomao was confident that she could cause more of an uproar than even her feline counterpart, if she might say so herself. Ahem, so the matter at hand, the quack said, having finally gotten his breathing under control. He drank some more tea. "I have been granted permission to return home for the first time in a long while, and I was just on my way there." "Huh, so they are finally sending you back, are they? Now you are just teasing me, young lady," the quack said with a touch of exasperation. He was right, and since it was preventing the conversation from progressing, Maomao decided to leave it at that. "So instead of your home you are here. Why is that?" she asked. "Yes, well," he looked at her with an inscrutable expression. The permission was granted on a rather unusual condition. "You haven't heard anything about it, miss. Exactly what kind of condition?" "Nothing major, but apparently someone wants to travel with me part of the way. This is a personal request from the matron of the serving women, so I'm sure it's no one strange." This apothecary shop, it turned out, was to be the meeting place. Maomao thought back to the letter she'd received several days before. It was a unilateral demand from Jinshi that she accompany him on an expedition he would be undertaking. No duration was specified and no destination was given. They hadn't even said when they would leave. Maomao was reluctant to close the shop every time they went on one of these little adventures. She knew the madam wouldn't be pleased about it either. That is why she had been in such a hurry to teach Seizen the ropes. "I thought maybe I would have a little longer." Thankfully, Seizen was a quick student. She had also readied a supply of medicine beforehand. She wondered why they were travelling with the quack doctor. She would ask later. The quack said, "As for why Maomao is here, I thought I could ask my family to look after her." He was clearly the only alternative, so it seemed a wise choice. He would be lonely, yes, but the kitten had first stayed at the palace because of Princess Lingli's whim. It would probably be hard to justify keeping her in the medical office much longer. "They will be happy to have her catching rats for them." "I see," Maomao said. The quack seemed jubilant at the idea of seeing his family again for the first time in more than a decade. Maomao recalled that they were producers of paper, supplying even the imperial court. They would certainly welcome a guard to watch for rats that might chew on the product. It sounded far away though, and Maomao the girl couldn't help wondering whether Maomao the cat would behave herself on the long journey. "Oh look, a cat," called the courtesans. It was only afternoon and they still had time before the customers started to arrive. The cat was unfortunately startled by the shouting. She scratched the duck's knees, then fled the shop. "Ow, no, Maomao, wait," one of the courtesans said, laughing as she watched the cat go. The animal with the unfortunate name ducked through a crack in the door of the shop and made for the entrance to the verdigris house. Maomao and the quack quickly put on their shoes and went after her. Maomao the cat weaved among women fresh from their early baths, and they did not look fully ready. She ducked between the legs of menservants who were preparing the bedchambers, and finally arrived at the kitchen. She could see 4 short legs. The kids were having a late lunch. "Where did you come from?" Chuyu asked as the cat came to a halt in front of him. He chewed on his chopsticks and looked at the calico. Zulin blinked her dewy eyes. Maomao the cat splayed herself over Chuyu's foot. Is this what you're after? Chuyu asked, picking up some fish with his chopsticks. It was just grilled blueback, but it had a pleasantly salty taste without needing any seasoning. Emro, Maomao batted down Chuyu's food. Hey you, the fish fell smack on the dirt floor, and Maomao gobbled it up. Awfully indelicate table manners for someone consuming such a fine feast, rather like a certain someone else. No, Maomao, don't do that, the quack cried as he arrived, breathing hard. Stupid cat, and who is the geezer? But that was Chuyu's only question. Wait, Maom. Seriously, he grinned openly at Maomao the girl. Even Zulin seemed to be laughing under her breath in her own mute way. Maomao, thoroughly displeased, at least managed to snatch up the calico. However, there was no hope of recovering the fish, which the cat kept firmly in her jaws. Chuyu looked sadly at his meal, but the cat seemed to intrigue him. When he poked her soft pink toe pads, he exclaimed, "Oh," and his eyes sparkled. They decided to leave Maomao the cat with Chuyu and Zulin. They gave strict instructions not to let her get away. They alerted one of the menservants so the kids probably would not get into too much trouble. When they returned to the shop, Maomao finally had a chance to ask the quack what was really happening. He fiddled uncomfortably with his facial hair and said, "You know about my family's paper business?" "Yes, sir." "Ahem, well, I am going home because there has been a bit of an issue. Some time ago, he had received a letter from his younger sister. She said that the quality of the paper had suddenly gotten worse. That problem was thought to be solved, but perhaps something new had arisen. That is why I requested permission to visit, but it seems someone important was hoping to see my village themselves. Jinchi had been interested in paper production since his days as a eunuch, so this likely struck him as the perfect opportunity to observe the process closely. But Maomao still wondered what the problem was this time. "What did her letter say?" she asked. "I am not entirely sure I can tell you here," the quack said, looking quite uncomfortable. "Please let me explain after we get there." "Very well," Maomao said, and as if on cue, a horse could be heard neighing outside. A somber young man appeared, his face classically lovely, but his bangs were worn long to hide a burn scar on his right cheek. Maomao recognized the gloomy visitor. He was not bad at all. He was the customer who had come to the Verdigris house when all the courtesans were summoned to entertain. He had paid no attention to them, simply sitting there and drinking wine. He was one of Jinchi's alter egos. Jinchi had used the false burn to conceal the true scar on his cheek. His overall appearance was much less sparkly than usual, so he looked like a completely different person. Maomao had once shown him how to disguise himself, and it appeared he had used that lesson well. If she hadn't seen him during his darker moments and in a few disguises, she wouldn't have realized it was him. The quack doctor didn't seem particularly wary, even when confronted with the lovely noble. He didn't recognize him at all. "Are you ready to go?" Basin spoke in place of the disguised Jinchi. His clothing was finer than Jinchi's, and Jinchi behaved like a servant toward him. This seemed to make Basin slightly uncomfortable. He was likely even more worried about being noticed by Maomao's sister Perrin before they could leave. "Am I ready?" "I dare say that is a little sudden," Maomao said. Yes, the letter had arrived several days ago, but there had been no specific indication of their departure date. Frankly, she hadn't gotten anything ready at all. I'm afraid it was out of our control. There were issues of timing to consider. We have already packed for you. It is true that Jinchi's appearance suggested they were going to go spying. Going spying suggested they would be at it for a while. Maomao understood that they must have pushed themselves to be ready for this moment. But to say they had prepared changes of clothes for a woman, did they understand what that meant? Whatever the case may be, regardless of what their relationship actually was, whether they were brothers or something else, the Emperor certainly worked Jinchi very hard. There were probably still things to clean up at the rear palace, along with many other professional headaches that Jinchi no doubt had to deal with. It was his job, so he could not exactly complain, but still, he is grooming a successor, Maomao thought, and then promptly threw the idea away. At the moment, Consort Jayuko's son, no, Empress Jayuko's son was the presumptive heir. And what is more, Consort Lihua had also born a son. The Emperor was only in his mid-30s and still in good health. He would likely remain on the throne easily until his children came of age. Of course, that was assuming nothing happened to him, but Maomao chose not to think about such an unhappy possibility. Chapter 9, The Paper Village. After travelling westward for 2 days by carriage, they reached the village that was the quack doctor's hometown. It sat next to some mountains and a forest, downstream from where the great river began. This river divided the country in half. Ditches ran alongside the river, but it seemed only weeds were growing in the fields. Maomao looked at them closely. The quack, who enjoyed talking, was happy to explain. He kept his voice down, perhaps to be respectful of Basin, who was sitting diagonally across from them. Jinchi sat beside Basin, but the quack still hadn't figured out who he was. "That's barley," he said. "Barley, sir. It seems extraordinarily well irrigated." The ditches ran all around the fields, but Maomao didn't think barley was supposed to need that much water. Maomao the cat was at her feet.